Louisa.
What's good, y'all? We got a special presentation, really special presentation by the good brother Juju, man. So if you don't mind sharing your screen, we could get started.
Alrighty, bro. Let me see.
And as you get into it, we're gonna talk about just your history and what got you to this Nsibidi project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of looks like you have that in your first slide. Is that right?
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff, bro. I made sure I came super prepared for today.
For sure. All right, let me get into. I'm gonna play my background. I think that's a good level. Let me get your banner too, because you want to know, let the family know where they can support you. I think that's a good size. And let's see how many people we got. Quenu Time or Quenu Time in the building.
Oh,
come on in, y'all. Like and share. So, can you make that full screen?
Full screen?
Yeah.
Prisoner.
What's good, aerosol subliminals? Welcome on in.
Like the whole tab, or you just want?
The whole tab, because I want you to go, just step by step and just tell the people who you are, where you're from, and I think it just left. You want to present again?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the specific tab. Okay, here we go. Whole tab.
There it is.
All right. Hello, guys. My name is Jordan Williams. I am African American of Afro-Cuban and Afro-Creole descent here in Texas, Houston, Texas, born and raised. I am a researcher on ideographic systems and writing systems, particularly in Africa and Asia, with some Americas here and there. My specialty is in Nsibidi lexicography. I am also a foreign language translator and a language learning and education specialist. I have specialty in Chinese, Spanish, Portuguese, and Igbo language. I am currently also working on cultural anthropology as well, particularly in Africa and its various communities in the diaspora.
Amazing.
So,
yeah. But if you go back to the first slide, I want to. So you're saying that you were of Afro-Cuban descent in
Yes.
Houston, Texas. So what about Nsibidi intrigued you as somebody of Afro-Cuban descent?
Well, as just being Black in Houston, just in general, I was always surrounded by so many different kind of cultures, so many different personalities, so many different ways of life. But particularly growing up, circumstances was what it was. So I watched a lot of movies and a lot of them were bootleg. So reading, a lot of Chinese subtitles for a lot of movies I watched. Eventually I started learning the characters on my own. Seeing them in town, I was very interested. Like, why is this, the way it is? And I kind of understood and had a resonance with it. I could speak Spanish, I can speak other different languages, but it was always something of a fascination with other ways of, communication that isn't just alphabet. So that kind of got me on this thinking and path. Being in Houston, there's so many different kinds of diverse Black people. We have Afro-Panamanians, Afro-Cubans, Creoles, Cajun, well, not Cajun, the Cajuns, they're white people. But we have different flavors and walks of life. It kind of got me interested in wanting to understand, more about who I was as an individual.
So would you say that for you, Nsibidi was a way of unifying different groups of African people in a Pan-Africanist sense?
So it started off with like a individual journey and connection, but then seeing it comes from a whole network of people and societies, which you'll see with these next few slides.
For sure.
that these people literally are spread out throughout the diaspora and influence so many different groups to create these various subcultures that use this writing. It's a way of like, this whole idea is like, imagine all of these families coming together and finally being able to communicate again. No matter what language they speak, they all can add to this experience visually.
All right, let's get on into it.
Yes, sir. Alrighty, so Nsibidi is considered to be one of the oldest writing systems in West Africa, if not in Africa alone, with roots that can be traced back thousands of years. There are a lot of debates between dates. Europeans have dated 400 CE, although native narratives and stuff like that have dated Nsibidi to be at least 2000 BCE, with documented records such as cloths, econ monoliths, and stuff like that coming around the later 400, 500 CE. Nsibidi consists of various different kinds of graphs and glyphs. They're written on objects, people, architecture, clothing. They're meant to represent ideas and concepts, as well as abstract things that wouldn't be very widespread and known outside of the community culture that uses these glyphs, because they kind of, pertain to a lot of the cultural elements in that environment. Nsibidi was traditionally a mystical script, although it did not exist alone with the Ekbe. It actually is very old and is older than the Ekbe society. This is very highly debated, but it was originally used for individual ritual expressions and veneration of Ndem, which are these variations of intermediaries or divinities between Abasi or Chukwu Abasi for some other groups, which is the supreme being. And then there's these intermediaries that they, gave this language to the people to be able to communicate. It's just, however, some of the symbols started to be appropriated for war and trade. This became the early formation of the Ekbe society, with public symbols for just trade as well, public notice, road closure, just passing information and recording information. This developed a variation of the two scripts. Unfortunately, with slavery and the decline of the amount of literate people who spoke and wrote in Nsibidi started to happen with the changing of obongs and chiefs within the Ekbe institution. So because of the high amount of a European need for enslaved individuals in the Americas, there started to be falsified court cases, highly, irrational charges, being like slavery for the smallest thing. And even when that didn't work, it became outright kidnapping for the enslavement of, individuals to meet the quotas for Europeans in the West. And to make sure that those who were captured weren't Ekbe, they had secret hand symbols to make sure. But after a while, that didn't matter. If you didn't agree with certain slave trade institutions, certain obongs had different, relations with different, kings, it became a mess. So essentially, a lot of Nsibidi literate people were then later, put onto ships and sold to the Americas. It's from here we had the various dispersal of Nsibidi and various writing forms from West Africa to the New World. Particularly, Nsibidi has its huge deposit in Trinidad, Cuba, and Haiti, as well as the southern U.S. in two pockets. Originally, there are direct descendants who came through the slave trade and the original breaking down of the Ekbe society, particularly in Ekoi and Efut groups of the Ekbe society, which came to Cuba and eventually formed the Ekbe and Abakwa society, known as Ekwe, on the island. Later, these people, when North America basically put a trade ban on, slavery and importation of slaves from Africa, they started to illegally smuggle people from Haiti, Cuba, other various islands. And this is where that background kind of comes in because I started to find out, oh man, okay, I'm from Houston, which isn't too far from Cuba, finding out, my own background. It's only 3 generations removed that my grandfather, my great grandfather basically came here and was basically removed from his parents. He made like the prenda that we have. We have like all these different things, like a lot of different small semblances of things that I'm finding out like, okay, this makes sense why, all of these different elements of myself that are different, they are lingering elements of this culture that, there were people who were taken from this place, not only taken from their homes, but literally taken from the resting or the place that they had, the stop that they had, the culture that they built there to dismantle the society again, in Cuba and back and selling these people to Texas and New Orleans and Louisiana, particularly, to various parishes. This became Veve and various different forms of writing um, for
So
us.
I got a question on that slide. So did you say that any of your relatives were fluent in Nsibidi?
So in Nsibidi itself, no. So I was saying more so that the Cuban, like Afro-Cuban culture, just Creole in general culture has a lot of different influences, Spanish and French as well, because Texas was Spanish owned, and then French and all that other stuff. More so, what I was saying with Veve and all that other writing, that's influenced by Nsibidi. Um, so it's more so that I've been drawing that connection. But Insibity it has 3 forms actually. So there is the secret esoteric, um, there's the hand gestures, which are for the masquerade, as well as sacred chants, and those are kept within the masquerades. The symbols themselves are used in various different cultures, and they're ideographs. So from like crosses on Bible cloths that are seen in Louisiana to like the veve that we have, all that other stuff. So it's not a matter of fluency like a regular language. Africans, most people know their language. When you write something down, there's a reason and purpose behind it. And that's why writing was often esoteric and kept, I don't say elitist, but it was kept in certain guilds outside of the public eye to a various extent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very similar to, Akauku among the Bamun people that's used for the Shupamim language, in the sense that it's a very elite cast of people involved in traditional fields of knowledge that weren't necessarily generally known. So, like, when the claim is made that Africans are not literate, I think the response to that should be that our version of literacy is more refined within our socio-political institutions than the Western world.
Exactly. And that's why I love this project. You're gonna see in the future. Well, basically here, this is talking about on the basic level. I have more visuals and stuff in other slides. Essentially, that's the point of this project. We're taking these graphemes, which they'll still be sacred and esoteric for the institutions that use them, but a public derived version for the communication of the diaspora of these people who were connected to this group. So, we already used a public version. We already had our own culture. We already had all these other different things that have flourished to new branches of this tree. But instead of just uprooting everything, we can create new experiences and still draw to this tree, if that makes sense. So we can go to the root. I'm documenting all of this stuff. These characters have all been documented. There are people contributing to the linguistic, contributions of these characters from different dialects and different village names. And we're trying to expand to different languages as well. Add Nkwoku, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which is the Igbo language dictionary we have, which has Nsibidi characters as well, as well as an Nsibidi display for each individual character. We're working on putting more information on that. But yeah, it's for people as they discover themselves, but also documenting the experiences in the diaspora as well. We want to keep all of that knowledge, that all this human experience can be captured within the square, which is the whole philosophy of this modern writing system. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna share a new tab.
Perfectly.
But yeah, any questions so far? I don't want to overwhelm you with any information.
No, this is amazing. We want you to keep going. Like, the more that you speak, the more people come into the building. So we greatly appreciate all the wisdom.
All right, bet.
Shout out to Zoo, my Willa family in the building. African languages, African writing systems is something that I'm passionate about. So like, we definitely want to reform this space and get us back to our cultural center. We got a question from Kwenu. You
Okay.
mentioned how Nsibidi is probably dated to a much older time than the Ekbe institutions, and if I can recall correctly, it has oral traditions. Can you answer that?
So it is recalled by an oral tradition. It's crazy because reading the sacred language of the Abakwa, a lot of the lore of Nsibidi and Ekbe and all the other stuff becomes transformed from a messenger language and script of oral language because it was used in oral chants for Ndem, like I said, these divinities that lived in trees. So they would speak and do whatever with that. The Ugakima actually learned from baboons called the Idiok, which taught them the Nsibidi and how to write it, as well as pantomime it and act it out. The problem is that eventually became, instead of it being a religious institution of like, this is chants and bards and poetry and writing, it became weaponized, as most things are. Eventually we start using these symbols to trade, to document information we don't want to, release to everybody. Certain things became varied in different ways. So essentially, this was oral in a lot of different ways. It will be written on people as they were saying these different writings and doing things for these different them. So yes, to answer your question.
Now, there's another question. Idiok and Ekpenyong, is there any archaeological evidence in a date period? I think he's looking for like oldest reference of Nsibidi.
Oldest, this is why I'm also going to the University of Uyo, if not this year, next year, because I have a lot of these questions and there's so much debate because so many different people used Nsibidi for different things. For example, the Kham people, the oldest stone datings, which is the 400 CE that we have, they used it for the burial of kings, and they built these stone monoliths, which were for the burial of kings, and they have Nsibidi on them. Then you have the Ekbe, which have these houses and these Mbe houses, or these Ufok, they are called, that have these symbols and signs, but they are used for religious veneration of the Ekbe. Then you have the Bekundi of the Mbe. They venerate something different, and they use the symbols for communicating with dead chiefdoms and stuff like that for themselves, as well as just departing with the dead and burial rites for themselves. So it's like who started what, who does this, who does what, and it can be complicated because you don't want to say that the culture with the most material culture is the most rich in it. If you have a culture that, if it started off orally, is it really them, or did they just started writing down everything and it was, more common in this area? So it's just very diverse. Also, people have moved around.
Yeah,
Nigeria, man, Nigeria.
Yeah, it's a pluridisciplinary approach. I think historical linguistics, historical archaeology, and just these different fields of knowledge could help in uncovering like what is the truth, what is the chronological period of these material cultures with respect to the evidence. So I think there's a lot of different, debates about the relationship of Nsibidi, especially with other African writing systems like Akauku, Debendudinter, and Ko, and whether or not these are more modern or whether or not they were contained within secret societies, in the Africana space. That has been heavily contested for the past century. So my understanding of it is the monoliths, the Nkom monoliths, and anything before that would definitely be oral. But at the same token, these are reciprocal reference systems. A lot of these animals that we see here that you're going to talk about, you could probably see them in like Eastern and Southern Africa. So who's to say that these people weren't communicating and interrelating over time?
And that's the thing about Nsibidi. It's different from other ideographic systems because it's so literal. It's very pictorial. Even though the lore is very rich, it's very, in your face. And that's what I love about the modern scripts. We're trying to make it as easy as possible, so it's not as dense as a lot of these ideographs that you'll see, coming up. So
Yeah.
they simplify, into these, see here, we have a court case that has, it's beautiful. This is how it's supposed to be written traditionally. So it can still bend and move and shape. Nsibidi literally means like, the transfer of essences, or, the curved lines. So, it's supposed to have this free form shape. However, it can also serve the public really well in being that these elements can be like captured within a square. Think of it like, the okra cloth I just showed you in a little bit
Yeah.
previously was literally like this philosophy of this entire project. Think of it like a proto photograph. Like you're capturing these moments into little boxes, and you're putting these graphics into a picture, almost like, instead of, think about it in African context, instead of, like in the Western world, they'll put, pictures on the wall. Well, in Africa, they'll put masks on the wall of ancestors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So think about this as like, instead of a camera, you've woven these moments and stitched these actual elements, pictorial elements, into a square. So now this is where the actual writing comes in. So these pictorial elements have representations. So this becomes universal now. The Taurus is a symbol of wisdom, for example, thought, the mind, wisdom, trickery. And a person, when you put these elements together, it creates the modern logograph for thinking. It's influenced directly by traditional graphemes, and it becomes this logograph that can be used by multiple cultures. So when I say think, I can also, speak it in Igbo. I can say it in, like Yoruba. I can do da 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 based off of the ideograph that I see. It becomes, an idea that's portrayed rather than the speech connected to it. That becomes the flexibility and the universality of this script, the very, versatility of it.
So you mentioned a term that I'm quite familiar with, ideograms, where a symbol conveys an idea. Would you say that the majority of Nsibidi contains ideograms, or are there also picto and phonograms? And also, what do you think is better in terms of, you mentioned modern writing before. So which one of those would you say is better with respect to everything?
So the thing is, a lot of these can overlap. For example, a tree, like I said earlier, in them are a boat, like they're inhabited into trees, or they live in trees, they dwell in trees. That's their abode. So a tree could literally be a tree in an ideograph, like you're saying, oh, like, this, but also the logographic meaning behind it can be for a divinity of sorts, or you can use this now for an aspect of a court case, so it becomes like, a morpheme of sorts. And now the modern writing, it becomes all these things too, because it doesn't lose any of that power. It just becomes more standard for, the writing.
Yeah.
And to say like, what's, for example, this is perfect. Like this is the traditional character here. It represents two people talking, with their mouths open, talking to each other. I don't know if you can see my screen, but yeah.
Yeah, you got you.
It's been directly simplified to this. Well, it's pretty much the same thing. You see the same thing here, and it's now used over and over again in these individual elements within each character.
Yeah.
So this means talk, for example. This means being, speech in a place, being, speech unifies, or speech together, and a unifying, like, a unifier in speech. This and that, this with that. This is like writing, because this is the character for a leaf, and then speech. So you have these two things, writing something onto paper. This is the character for language, because it has an elder with a blade. So speaking, the elder, the blade, a language, or it can be a chant of sorts, but specifically spoken language. It just means language when you speak, your mother tongue. But yeah, each one of these elements are basically essentially used over and over and over again, where they would be individual graphemes for you to interpret and just talk about in the past because people, had that time, and that was a huge. It is still a huge aspect of the culture. It also can
Mhm.
be used for modern reading and writing.
This is bringing up something that is very familiar and is probably familiar to a lot of people in the audience, especially those who are of Ghanaian descent. We have Brother Nyame Ubuntu in the comments, and I know that's their name for the ineffable all. But when you're talking about some of the early, pictograms, and you look at the linearization process, like if you went from the Menduden Ter to Demotic, it seems like with Nsibidi, in relationship to the archaic forms, the modern forms are more so logographic and ideographic, and you could basically use a basic concept like what you had earlier in the duality to articulate related concepts and themes. Is that correct?
Exactly. So I don't know. Well, I don't know how familiar you are with other scripts, like for example, Jaguan in Chinese. I hate to bring up, like non-African cultures, but that is the closest aspect I can give you. They have a
Mm.
very similar process where there were these pictographic, different elements that were used, that were put onto different, mediums. However, th- those went through drastic changes. I don't know if you see here, these are very like minimal changes. I haven't changed much from the traditional form. It's just, however, instead of being individual elements that would appear on cloth in boxes, or only used interwoven in court cases, or just very much used in a traditional artistic way, or used in a esoteric, more secretive way, or public notice. The thing is, those things are all components of language, and they all serve their purpose. And now that kind of combines all of them to be a functional, not functional because it's already functional, but functional for modern public use, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. And I would say that even, with respect to a lot of the relationships, we do find, Southeast Asian and South Asian references in the Bamileke culture in Central Africa. And most people are more comfortable with parallelism as opposed to diffusion between the two civilizations to explain, those correspondences, right? But we know Nsibidi is African. We know that it is invented by African people.
Exactly. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Here's the traditional um ideograph here. I don't know if you see those same, square boxes. Nothing has been removed. We've just captured an element from the traditional and just captured it into a simple, simplified version, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. And shout out to Don't Ruin Us, God said, Yame Ubuntu, Zoo, Quenu Time, Aerosol, and everybody in the building. If you like what you're listening to, I don't think y'all have ever seen an Instabidi breakdown on YouTube before. So hit the Cash App, hit His Royal Highness on the Cash App, hit
Hello.
the Cash
I need to
App,
change my name.
give all the support that he desires because this is some groundbreaking stuff.
I need to change my name. I was young, y'all. I was young, y'all.
No, it's lit. It's lit.
But no, hold on. I'm gonna show you the
Uh huh.
display. Give me one second. I have so much, like, I can go on for hours. I
Yeah,
love
we
this
dropping
stuff.
dimes right now.
Let's see.
Yeah, in the midst of this, I got a video that I'm producing about the African origin of writing. It's going to be coming soon.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear it, man.
And it's mainly, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Diane's article in the UNESCO papers.
I am not. You should definitely share more information.
Yeah, he basically deals with the Dahomey culture and some of the Dahomey writings, and he compares them, with Menduden Ter, and he basically shows an African cradle in an African context where the development of these writing systems follows the same, pattern from pictograms to logo and ideograms to phonograms.
I see.
So Nsibidi would definitely be part of an African context as opposed to an Asian context.
Exactly. And it's crazy that you say that, because a lot of these traditional characters were actually the influences for like Akago, which is the phonetic Igbo system, similar to how like in Japan they derived their hiragana, like their whole kana system from Chinese characters. This is a whole system for Igbo, learning derived from traditional Nsibidi characters. And there can be different. The thing about these characters too is, if people just took the time, and the community just, likes the characters, they can create a phonetic system for, the pronunciation of the characters themselves. So basically everybody's, imagine a Nigeria where everybody can read everybody's street signs the same, but you can tell what shops are what group because of the phonetic system that they use.
Yeah. And I think I use your keyboard, your Nsibidi keyboard, to make one of my videos.
That's good. I'm so happy to hear that, bro. Like, I'm so happy to hear that, man.
It was definitely, hold on a second. Let me see if I could bring this up to show the fan what I'm talking about. Y'all hear this, y'all see this, like, it was definitely like
recording ideas in
some
Nandu and Ogboli in Onitsha.
Okay, bro. Like, I need to get people to understand like how to do tone in like tone marks, because the thing is that's just Akago, which is great. That's but you can actually like write Nsibidi characters with this keyboard. I could give a quick tutorial as well.
Yeah, but I think you wanted to share something first. I don't want to sidetrack you.
I have so many different things, man. I have the actual set of characters we have on our dictionary. I was gonna show some resources where people can go to get more information. I can show the keyboard as well. I have that up.
Yeah, whatever you got. I mean, the fam is waiting. They're here and enjoying this.
Let's see.
Shout out to Lee Clinton. And when you're ready, just add it, and I can add it to the stage.
I got you.
Yeah, this is lit. This is definitely lit.
Let me share my whole screen so I can just flip back and forth.
Jian Jai. It's the Wolof, or the first Jollof. And yeah, the Dian is the Senegalese. That's what he was talking about. Pathé Dian. Yeah, Pathé Dian is the Senegalese scholar who was a student of Lilius Hamburger and had some disagreements with Theophile Benga. So yes, that is correct.
Let's see. Well, okay, these are just like, for example, this is on my homepage. These are just like a chart of the radicals and derivatives and stuff like that. You see, there isn't very much difference, going on. So it really is, it's just creating something that's more feasible and digestible for the public.
Yeah. And we got casual rap god in the build.
This is what's up, bro? This is our Nsibidi display. At Koku. We have so many different characters here. As you can see, certain elements get borrowed over and over again. That's the point of the logo graph. It becomes recognizable over time. You just take your time. Within each character, we have a bunch of different information. The Nsibidi itself. So this is in, it's not in Unicode yet, and that is,
which is crazy to me how it's not a Unicode.
It's, bro. I have to explain to a Eurasian audience that Africans, are literate and can read and write, and it's hard. It's very hard out here, man. And that's another point of my page too. I'm just gonna go on a little tangent right quick, but I do like. Let me just hide my face.
Yeah, he's crazy. He's one of the greatest. Like, I'm not kidding. Besides Smash Rockwell and Reggie, like Juju Man is the greatest like African writer that I've seen.
Heck nah. But
reader, like he's crazy with it.
Heck nah. But I just do want to show people that hey, like this, you can do stuff with this stuff. It can be used for reading and writing. Just get stuff for the not fans, but people to read and write and use this. So tattoos or just writing stuff, just to eventually get it out there a little bit more. Just really showing how it's a visual system. It's not supposed to be something difficult. Just relax, take your time, digest it bit by bit, and it becomes something very, very intuitive. But I won't go too much on that.
So, do you use Igbo mainly when you're using Nsibidi?
I do. I do use Igbo, or I do use English sometimes. Not really English, but more so like just certain semblances or understandings that I have, from just being black here in America and stuff like that. That's my English, AAVE, more than English.
Yeah. So Ebonics or Black English.
Ebonics, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I mean, that's the thing, because a lot of brothers and sisters be talking about how we need to retain our own language systems, in this Western world, and we have our own writing that we could use, especially for those. This is a West African system for those who love West African cultures. This is something that we could use as a reciprocal reference system to build up Black people everywhere.
Yes, sir. And so funny you say that. I literally made this whole sub page, which is supposed to be another branch. It's crazy. Exactly, for Corivini, exactly. So I made it for Corivini to use it in that reading and writing respect.
Yeah.
So that way people can enjoy it, and it becomes literally a bridge for communication. I'm also doing Abaquois as well for Cuba, but if that's just where I'm at, Texas, Louisiana, when I go to Cuba, and then I'm just going to go to the root of all this stuff when I go to Nigeria. So it really is dropping, seeds, and then any of the profits and stuff like that from this, I'm trying to connect with linguists. So it's all, eventually used for like redirecting and the refunding of, the communication and linguistics and language study of these people. So many professors, like I talk to them like, oh, we haven't been paid in a while. We haven't Like the person I'm working with right now, he has issues sometimes because he can't speak to me because he has certain different issues, and I have an understanding of a lot of what Nigeria is, and I have issues on my own side. It's just like to have that kind of bridge. That's why I'm also trying to write a book as well. I'm almost up with that. So the money from that is used for creating more books, funding African and diasporan, writers and researchers to contribute to this more, so it can be a feasible data set. And even though it's only 2,500 characters right now, which is amazing because this is a logographic system that can do a lot, it can expand to branch off into different like conventions and sets. So you can be like, oh, this is the Haitian set within the NSI, Nsibidi, Unicode block. We have the Igbo set. We have all these different things, and a lot of these characters will overlap, but then there'll be, of course, different cultural specific characters, and that's the beauty of this. We all understand 90% of each other, but there'll be that 5 to 10%. Well, 5% for new stuff as new things come along, but also that 5% for individual cultural expression in the region you're in.
Well, so could you use Nsibidi for Southeast African or Southeast Nigerian languages? Could it be used? Would you say that it's easily intelligible in the other African languages as well?
Yeah, that's literally why I made this page. So like it's it's a logo graphic, so it literally gives you for example, this is voila, which means here it is. Anya means eyes. Well, like the character itself just means eyes, and then there's eyes with this light over it.
Yeah,
so it's like almost like something flashing over your eyes, like voila, here it is. I see what I'm looking at. And that's within, like, you don't have to look at the language underneath. That's just already within the character. So you can literally put your hand at the bottom of all of this stuff, information at the bottom, and it can be applied to any language and culture. That's the beauty of this, writing system. And this is why languages and cultures very old communicated with pictures and, visual communication, because you can unify people for miles with just pictures and graphs. That's China, India, Egypt, like all these different places that they use visual communication because it's intuitive. You can,
Yeah.
instead of being divided by ethnic lines, if I have these easy instructions and pictures, I can follow these instructions and do what I have to do. So this can be huge in the education sector, and just also understanding how Black people are very visual active people. These things describe actions in visual communication. It's a whole different means of expressing how we think as a people. It would be more visionary. And if you think about other societies, I hate to once again bring up Asia, but East Asia, the reason why they're so good at anime and all those, so their language is literally pictures, and they're writing in logographs that capture moments that they're writing. And we have that same concept. We already have this concept natively, and it can be spread to all the different experiences we have globally.
One of the big things that people that I've heard use against African languages is the idea that it can't be applied to STEM or governance. Now, from your experience with Nsibidi, would you say that that's true?
This is absolutely false. So I don't know well, let's see. I have where did I put it? Oh, here. Literally made a bio, photosynthesis, all this other stuff. This literally microalgae, plants, macroalgae, bacteria. Like, this is biology, folks, and it's all being written in Nsibidi.
Yeah, right there.
Right here. Like, I don't want to put too much like to where it's just all 100% in Nsibidi, because I want people to be able to read what they're looking at, but to show that it has application. It's not just, this is what I'm having a problem with, Unicode. It's just like, oh, those are pretty artistic symbols. And I'm like, no, you wouldn't say this to Chinese, but anyways, showing that it has application. You can use it in describing things, not only esoterically. It's not some, it started off esoterically, but also can be used exoterically. It can be used in the academic sphere. It can be used in just enjoyment. It can be used on signs. I've made another post showing, like, it can be used in everyday, stuff.
That's amazing. So right there, you already have like the building code, with signage and modes of egress, for construction engineering, right? And I could already even see mathematics. I'm sure you have a mathematical example for us, like algebra or something like that.
Yes, but like, actually, not gonna lie, I was a little confused too, so I have to figure out, because like, I'm like, okay, if I write, you can write like variables, for example. I'm like, okay, do we use like Akagu for this, or am I gonna like use actual characters for this? And I don't want it to be confusing, so algebra is gonna be a thing, because also I'm like, okay, do we use Roman numerals? Because even other societies, they still use like Latin alphabet to a degree, algebra and all that other stuff. It's just because math has been, unfortunately, in the Western world, for that kind of spirit, has been captured in.
Well, you know that the Latin letters are from the African cradle.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, I do know that. It's just like, they kind of not popularized, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it comes from, all of that comes from Egypt. Yeah, all those letters come from Egypt. I told somebody the other day that Hebrew comes from the hieroglyphs. They almost cursed me out. I was like, you can just look it up. It's not that hard. Like, it's literally not that hard. And I'm doing another study as well, where I'm starting to actually compare the traditional and the modern instances of these glyphs, not only to.
So I want you to answer this question. This is the big deal with Obanga's analysis. Which one would you say came first in the African cradle, the Mendudentur or Nsibidi?
Like I said, that's kind of hard to say regarding the coded origins of Nsibidi, but it's crazy that it has a lot to do with a leopard society and all the other stuff, and then regarding like the priesthoods and stuff like that in Egypt. But I just think it's all African. I think it's on the Fertile Crescent, like that Congo all the way up the Nile situation. I think a lot that has a lot of rich culture that, the Nile flows up. So just all of that kind of went up, there, and they created something that, was highly influenced by Black Africa. I could, like I said, this is still in, debate and stuff like that. But I also think, information can be not universal, but in the African experience is very, even though there's so much different diversity, there's a lot of overlap too. And you can probably see that in the writing as well. As much as it is, people want to claim it as Mediterranean, all that information and culture that they were getting was very much African from, the Nile starts in Lake Victoria, Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, all of that stuff.
And we even have I have in the Igbo video that I made, Joe Irish, he looked at the dental morphology of the Igbo people and he connected them to Great Lakes region, so-called Eastern Bantu populations in Eastern Africa, which would be where the Remenkimi said that they came from in the quote-unquote Iburan culture. So from Florida fauna to just the different concepts environmentally, many of those things were basically shared, in between regions of Africa as people were migrating back and forth.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. Also, there are some, I don't want to say debates, but some ethnic people do say that they have descendants or lineages connected to Canaan and stuff like that. I won't say, that's wrong or anything like that, because some people do actually believe that, and they have whole branches of their lineages and their connections to that. Me being from where I'm at, I'm not going to debate anybody on their culture and interpretations and beliefs. It's just things are older and a lot more interconnected than people would believe. People were moving around constantly.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I'm kind of I was going to say earlier, kind of going to look at too. It's the hieroglyphs and Nsibidi in its traditional and modern forms, kind of comparing that to just two African alternate ways of communication outside of phonetic communication. And I just want to compare that and see what I get. That's my next, research after all this other stuff.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, if there was a righteous African government, all of this would be funded from start to finish, right? So we have to start testing our leaders to see how many of them are willing to push the meter forward and how many of them are bought and paid for.
Yeah, man. Well, when that day comes, just let me know. But until then, I'm going to make sure I share all of these resources. So Okwid, or Oku ID, identity, okwuid.com. They have a full list of Nsibidi resources they got from our Kwenu Time chat, that we, they basically essentially shared to get Nsibidi out there. It has a bunch of resources. Shout out to Chiadi Kobe Wamubani. I've been trying to get, in touch with him. He has a lot of older work that, he was trying to get this out to the public. A lot of people were rejecting things. He didn't have a lot of resources as well. We have so much more modern developments. He's gone to do so much. He even got mentioned in Black Panther for his work, because there is use of Nsibidi in Black Panther. I don't know if most people know that. That's why the whole thing of the whole Black Panther situation is also inspired by the Ekbe Leopard institution. Most people do not know that as well.
And those are the Sem priests, right, in classical times?
Yeah, those are they have different functions. If you read the sacred Abakar language, it's a huge bunch of different stuff that goes on in Ekbe. There's different masquerades for this. There's different rituals and guilds and obons that have control over different things and stuff like that. But it's very elaborate. They have that same ritual drink, purple drink, that you drink to have certain abilities. The man is said to transform into a leopard and do different things and stuff like that. There was even a leopard scare in the 60s that I want to do a YouTube video on. That there was this person going around killing people and carving people, they were carving symbols in people in the 1960s, and they were trying to allude that to the Ekbe, which they had nothing to do with, but they were trying to say that they were basically coming around and killing people, which is why also a lot of Nsibidi related people or Nsibidi enthusiasts kind of dropped following post-colonialism alongside, of course, the Biafra War, other different things, as well as slavery and all the other stuff. But essentially, like these murders would have, people like carved up and stuff like that, and it was just some random person doing this stuff, but it was being put on the Ekbe society. It was a British tactic to basically like make them seem like they were just like these evil people doing all this weird stuff that nobody understood.
Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of dark vestiges of our history that are connected to us retaining our writing in spite of it all.
Yes, exactly. Anything that deals with the African in, like, the thing is, we are artistic people, but when we overlap that art in any sector, it's not taken seriously. I don't understand that. Like, it's like we can't have language and it's an art, because then that's like, oh, it's like that's, we're not gonna take them seriously. Oh, writing and it's art. Oh, we're not gonna take them. Fashion and it's art. Oh, we're not gonna take them seriously. Math and it's art. Music and like stuff like that. When it overlaps and it has more applicable spaces, it's downplayed as just art. Which art even now is more downplayed. But in other cultures, it's fantasized. It's more there's a mysticism behind it. But for us, it's primitive. It's like this primitive stigma, and it's reduced to art. Whereas it was applied in multiple spheres. It's used for the enrichment of our culture and selves. I think that goes into the stripping of identity and a lot of the things that went into justifying enslavement of human beings. You kind of need to demonize their culture, reduce their ways of communication and expression to nothing, essentially, like primitive art or oppressive expression, essentially, when really these people are rich. These ancestral spirits and inspirations are bursting through them, and you reduce this as art is stripping them and like kind of minimalizing their experience and identity, especially in a place where like us here, we're not on the soil that we're meant to be on.
Yeah, and that brings me into the segue, because you were talking about the modernization, being able to use, because we're definitely not necessarily in 16th century, Nuri civilization anymore, right? We're in a modern context. So can you describe the different systems of Nsibidi and go through, the ancient versus, I think you said Akagu, what was what you were showing before?
I got you. Let's see if I can open this. Okay, no. Let me make this bigger. Okay, I guess I gotta download it. Chai. But yeah, essentially, Akago is the phonetic script for the pronunciation of the Nsibidi characters for Igbo. The thing is, these characters can be used. They were originally supposed to be used for all the languages that used them. So like Hood, Ibibio, Efik,
like the Cross River.
Yeah, all those different ethnic groups. And it's been hard to find other conscious people that are willing to support this idea until now. That's why I'm kind of doing a lot of stuff that I'm doing. I'm going to Uni of Uyo, all that other stuff to connect, and do that. But this is the phonetic branch of this script for Igbo. It has all the Akago letters, which are, you can see here if I zoom in. Okay, well, I guess it's a little blocky, but each individual letter is inspired by an Nsibidi character, and that becomes the phonetic system for the pronunciation of these characters. And then this character set you'll see here has like all the radicals here, which is that whole big chart that I had on my homepage. And then this here is all the beautiful hard work of Chiadi Kobe Waubani. I want to give him all his kudos because I have read this through and through, and it's an amazing document. So essentially, this is the modern character here, the phonetic Akagu pronunciation, and then it's English meaning. And some of these are I don't say modern. Some of them are completely, I don't say new, but they are new in a sense that they have a new convention. They've been stripped, and some of these are directly derived from glyphs we see in literature that are public. And that's another thing about the script. It doesn't evade, or invade on any of the Ekpe institution, like rights and stuff like that, because these all have been revealed in academia and all that other stuff. So this keeps people safe from any kind of accusation, if that makes sense.
And you're talking about accusations of, bad actions.
I'm not bad actions. It's just like, some people like could be stigmatized with Ekpe, which, it's not necessarily a bad thing now. It's very celebrated in culture. It's just, some people have certain stigmas behind these characters, as well as, they wouldn't feel like they're encroaching on the Ekpe society. So that was a whole fear too. When I started releasing this and, started sharing this, it's like, oh, who is he? Why is he da 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 da? He's like, and like I was from, across the ocean, all this other stuff. And it becomes this matter of like, okay, these not only are these revealed in academia as well. I've gotten permission from several people. I have 2 connections with Ekpe Isong, which are faces or representatives in the Ekpe society. And then, they're both actually professors. It's crazy. They can actually say that they're in Ekpe. They just can't say anything about Ekpe, So, like stuff like that. They've been encouraging me to do things with the graphics. The graphics are actually the least esoteric branch. It's very esoteric, but it's the least esoteric aspect of the society. So they've, and these have all been revealed in academia. So they're not, worried about this stuff. It's more so the public that kind of starts conjuring, of these different narratives around the writing.
So were you initiated into their society before you delve deep into this?
No. So I actually got a lot of, this is gonna sound weird, but I got a lot of like dreams are surrounding this, like all this, not just this in particular, but I would do a lot of writing and stuff like that. I actually do believe that's why I was fascinated with Nsibidi, and like I said, finding out my background and all that other stuff, it kind of does make a lot of sense. But I was a follower of Chiadi Kobe's project as I went into junior year of high school, senior year of high school, and I really took it seriously freshman year, but he disappeared around that time. That was 2019, 2020 of college. So like he just kind of like went off the grid. Nobody could find him. Nobody could talk to him. I was just like, hey, I've been doing so much research. I have all these documentations. I saw your vision you were doing on your blog. You was trying to share so much about how this could be used. And it was in a much simpler form than this. And now it's like, I've been trying to get in contact with him, and he's like nowhere to be seen. A lot of his work has just, it's just and all that other stuff. And I don't want that vision to die. And I was a part of a lot of the, stuff that was going on in this beforehand. He just kind of got discouraged. And I felt like, that shouldn't be the case. It has so much potential. And that's why I started, going from there and taking it seriously, starting creating, sources, creating documents, creating the keyboard, platforms, connecting with Nkoku, lexicography, doing.
So would you say that, because obviously the Nigerian community, Southeast Nigerian, is very Christian predominantly. Mm-hmm. Have you had any help from, those church communities, or have you received like stigmatization from that side?
I haven't received any help. I've definitely received some stigma, and it's crazy because that's another thing about these characters. I have a whole other paper I've written with the modern and the traditional versions. You can literally justify traditional narratives as well as biblical narratives within the same character, and that's the concept of cultural or religious morphographism. The concept exists in Chinese as well. That's why you can use a character for like Buddhism, Hinduism, Tao, all at the same time, because they kind of represent similar but different concepts. So like the characters can be broken down in different ways and still justify each of the different beliefs or expression, and that's what makes it powerful as well. All these cultures can put their spirit on top of it, and it still, means something.
So you could pray to Jesus Christ and still use Nsibidi.
Yes, yes, and it's literally like, all within the characters and stuff like that. Chinese as well. That's literally like I'm doing a whole dissertation on that, man. It's crazy. Like I have.
Yeah. So you were getting into it. You were getting into the process.
Yeah, but
I wanted to sorry to cut you off. I wanted to show something for those who are not familiar with the ethnic groups. You were speaking about the Igbo. You mentioned the Ibibio, and are any of these other ethnic groups, primary users of Nsibidi?
So they all use them in different ways. Now, of course, there's been so much different change due to slavery, colonialism, displacement. So the modern people who mostly use Nsibidi are I don't want to say that too, because like I haven't been to Nigeria in a minute, and that's why I'm trying to go back now. But the information I've gotten is Arochukwu, Efik, and some Ibibio and Anan people, and some there are very little Ekwe people that use the script. It's because it's like Ekpe is also dying because of different things. Like some people are just no longer enthusiastic about certain things, or it's just the elitism. Some people say about the society and the closed culturalness and the secretness about certain things causes a lot of things to be stagnant. But yeah, it has different uses in Arochukwu, in Ibibio, and Anan groups, Efik groups, Bahomono groups. Like traditionally, it was used all across that general region. It's just a lot of those groups are now in very little population. The literate people have been taken. Some groups are wiped out or extinct, or they've been entirely displaced onto another island. There's a whole sub-ethnic group of different ethnic groups of those people in Cuba and Haiti, for example. They still retain their chants, their knowledge and information and stuff like that. But it's beautiful, and I'm documenting that as well.
That's beautiful. All right, so we could proceed with breaking down. I think you were breaking down the relationship between Akagu and just the modern language, and how you can convey all of these different concepts.
Yeah, so if you see here, like it's showing all the citations for the traditional symbols and stuff like that. The middle writing here is just the phonetics. This is the phonetic script for Igbo specifically. If you took that out, you can put anything in there. If I made a script, I think there's an Ibibio script that they made recently. You can put that in there. If I want to use these for tree, you can use that as well. You can put the alphabetic, phonetic pronunciation for that. It's just, of course, I won't say it's one-to-one, because of course a culture can take these characters and choose to represent things a different way, similar to the Japanese. They don't represent everything similarly to Chinese and Korean. And that's the beauty about the script, though. I can still understand you no matter what version of the language you use. It will take a little bit of more reading to understand the context of the situation.
Yeah. And it's really amazing how you have, like, I like how the pronunciation of the symbol is also in Nsibidi, because a lot of times with African dictionaries, they'll have the pronunciation in like a Latin script or like a Latinized orthography, so it kind of works to have it full circle.
Yeah, so like once again, I don't want to take credit for this. So this is a lot of the work of Chiadi Kobi Wawabani. I did edit a lot of the other works and made them more modern, but I want to give him all of his credit and flowers. So this particular document, I did make a bunch of other stuff that they have here that you can see that it can be applied in various different ways. This Nsibidi workbook, for example, is a great resource. I want to make sure everybody sees the link at the top. But it does break down, what the perform script is, what it does.
Can you send that to me maybe I could post it in the chat?
In the chat.
Yeah.
1 second. I don't want to make a screen glitch. Here we go.
There it is.
Also, I'll just send other stuff too, like the keyboard.
Yeah. Send me all the links, because people definitely want to, I know there's a lot of brothers and sisters out there who want to get into Nsibidi. and you want to start learning some of their ancient writing systems. So I saw a lot of different introductory stuff that would be really useful to them.
Of course, man. Like that's all. That's what we really need. The more people who write, is the better for us because we really do get Unicode. Like, imagine texting on this stuff. You know, like seeing it in street signs and all this other stuff. It can be very possible if we have the community supporting all of this stuff, reading and writing in it.
And the thing about it is, we have the ability to do Unicode and Akauku. So like, if we started to do that, like translate Nsibidi and Akauku in a language that's already Unicoded, it brings all the more reason to make Nsibidi part of Unicode.
I'm telling you, man. It's already. I know it's gonna happen. It's just taking a while to prove. I know it's gonna happen because so many people want to learn. It's been around so many different things. Black Panther was enough. It was in two of the like both of the movies. So there's so much different things, and I'm trying to connect with other people too, like Black animators, graphic designers, artists, because anime, for example, like it can be completely Black in a Black language, in a Black script, all this other stuff, and it can generate wealth and excitement and cultural capital for different groups. Like, people can start buying things and all that other stuff, and it would benefit them in the long term. They would have something to be proud of, tattoos, all this kind of stuff. And I'm also writing a whole book on esoteric applications and stuff. So it can be
there's an esoteric and an exoteric. So there's like a secular versus, non-secular.
Yes, exactly.
Because I think a lot of people would feel, especially those who may come from a more religious background, they may feel uncomfortable with these African writings. They may, because they'll see you with, Juju Man and, be afraid of Juju. Even my own name, Kamji, Kamji is associated with a secret society, the people who defend the Mvan, right? Or the Eri or the Ezi Nri in an Igbo context. A lot of people would feel uncomfortable with that. So it's important to show them that there's different dimensions and different ways of applying this to our everyday reality.
Yeah, and that's the beauty. Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to make sure people understand that the writing itself, it's unbiased, because like it captures an action in reality, which anybody, a Muslim, Hindu, Christian, anybody will eat something. It doesn't matter what you're eating. You eat whatever. So now it becomes a matter of like, the character capturing eating, it only captures, the mouth moving or something like that. It doesn't assign the identity that people have stigmatized with like a phonetic script or something like that. That's very expressive, of those people and that identity and culture that they have. These ideographs can be taken, logographs can be taken, and then just basically essentially not only used in the way that they're taken, but then as you start learning the elements, more characters can be created. That's the beauty of this system. You're eventually going to learn enough and continue that experience. That's why Chinese has so many thousands of characters. People eventually learned each other's stuff and started making more things for their own, place and region.
Versions. And I definitely know that, as more brothers and sisters start to use it, there's going to be different streams and different wavelengths,
exactly.
In systems. Zunzo put Biraga. Do you know what that means?
Biraga, I do not.
Yeah. Shout out to Naraya Parish. Hola, sis.
Hola, sis is crazy. Wow.
There's definitely some, Afro-Latino or Africans in the quote-unquote Latin diaspora. How do you feel about that terminology?
Which term?
Do you think a Black person could be a Latino or a Latina?
I mean, I don't say like I'm very much, aware that people can be, Latino. For example, like I have plenty of family that are, Puerto Rican, Cuban, even Creole. Like I've been to Brazil. I've seen Black people that speak Portuguese that look just like me,
Yeah.
That identity it's an ethnic group. It's not like, and even with that, it's regional. So it's very varied. I think anybody can be Not anybody. I'm not gonna say that. But I think any background can really have that. Especially Black people, we're so diverse. We've been spread out everywhere. Of course, a Black person can be Afro Latino. Amara la Negra, for example. Amara la Negra is a perfect example. She literally speaks perfect fluent. Celia Cruz, she was huge in salsa and Afro-Cuban identity. Her whole Kimbara literally means to enjoy something, to have festivities, in Bakongo language. So like these people, it's not lost. You can be of this other place that isn't English speaking America, and still retain your Blackness somewhere else.
Yeah, there's so many different arguments in that conversation itself. Like there's people who say that Black is only quote unquote African American or Black American, which we know linguistically that's not true. That's definitely not true. You hear that argument a lot. Then you have people like I know people who would be called Afro-Brazilians, but they prefer to be called African. Like they would rather identify as African versus the quote unquote slave master. So there's different dynamics
Yeah.
on both sides.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing too. That becomes a whole, like there's so many different cultures. Because for example, I try and like really harness, my Africanness and stuff like that in a lot of things that I do. I'm still very much aware of my culture here in the new world. I just can connect it to these various stems in, I don't say the old world, but the continent home. And it's just and even like the West Indies as well. In the Caribbean, there are so many different things that came about. It's just when I do that, it's like, oh, you're trying to stem out and branch out. Like I'm like, no, I'm really well versed in understanding that we here as a people, we came in various different waves and came with different things that contribute to the African American experience and culture. And it's like it does us much more good if we understand the roots and branches and connections of those cultures. It would just only make our own culture stronger. We don't have to honestly change or erase anything. Just find we have roots too. Just find those, stems and leaves and branches.
Mm-hmm. That goes back to what Dr. Obadeli Cambone talks about when he talks about rivers and rivulets. How, in terms of our linguistic reality, our cultural reality, a lot of people want to focus on the small, like, oh, I'm an Igbo, I'm a Bibio, I'm a Mande, as opposed to seeing like the bigger river, like the bigger stream and the origin of us all.
I agree. Like so many people are caught up on the prestige of the individual, which I get. Like we are very diverse people. We come from very diverse lineages, very diverse, cultures that have thousands of years of specific, cultural expression. And I think that doesn't have to change. I think it can be a means of enriching us. Our competition shouldn't be stopping each other. It can be a means of, I'll say let's outdo each other, but like let's move forward in what we do. Let it be a means of, how can I show off my branch of like the motherland and like make sure that we're seen as this, subculture and stuff like that. Instead of we have a better culture than you, we have da 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 da. Instead, it's a matter of I'm going to do the best in expressing my individual culture. So, it can be that, playful competition rather than violent not saying violent, but, self-destructive, kind of rhetoric of like, who has this or, this identity with this. I'm more, half caste, all this other stuff that, I've heard in the community. There's plenty of positivity as well, but these rhetorics that can be divisive based off of things that, nobody on either side can control essentially.
Yeah, so Nyaki has this message. Can you interpret that? It looks like it's an Igbo.
Oh, a lot of people do not know like how to use Nsibidi writing.
That's very, very true. And that's kind of why your project exists. So We've been on for about an hour 19. Is it cool if I drop the link for anybody who may have some, further questions?
Of course, yeah. And I have plenty of stuff to show and all that stuff too. If you have any.
Yeah, you could feel free to share. I'm gonna drop the link, and if you would like to come up and ask Juju Man, the legend, about some of his Nsibidi work, feel free to hit the link and come on in.
And here's that Christian example too. Like I literally broke this stuff down and like, hey, Bible verse, Bible verse, Bible verse. Like don't come for me, bro. Like,
yeah, because they were trying to trap you with that. They were trying to
literally like, yeah, but yeah.
Trying to pin this thing.
And the keyboard, here we go. Yeah, so the keyboard also too has two functions. I saw that you used it, but thing is, you can if you use so when you type out a vowel, for example, if you use that backslash button, it'll do an under dot. If you use the left and right brackets, they'll make the high tone and low tone. So it'll just change it so where you can actually add Nsibidi. So it's not just like, Akagu, like if you just did this, you can actually change. If I wanted to say like Kwenu, for example, like Kwenu time in the comments, Kwe, and then you can actually, write out the Nsibidi. And I've been trying to share this with people. I also need to teach people how to use the keyboard as well.
Yeah.
As well as share the font. It's just the font is constantly updating because I just need to share a version of it that's, it is what it is right now. But there are other things that are going on as people have feedback. Characters are being simplified too, because some things are hard. Some things do look hard to write, and I don't want that to be the case. But it will still be simplified via traditional.
We have a lot of Evo speakers in the building.
Chai. Hey, that's great.
You know what Kwenu said here?
Hold on, let me come back to the screen.
You don't have to stop sharing because it'll still be up with.
Okay, sometimes it'll do that like 80 different screens type stuff.
Oh yeah, I feel you. And feel free, anybody in the Raya or Solar, if y'all want to hop on in, feel free to hit the link. It's pinned to the top.
Kwenu, she's my friend, bro.
Nice.
How about Enyim? So like it's nothing serious. How about Onion Jackety? But yeah, let me reshare.
What's good, more one?
Yo,
KMG, what's good, bro?
We just chilling here. I wanted to give y'all a good presentation on Nsibidi, because my man Juju Man's been hiding in the wings, and it's been a long time coming.
The presentation was wicked, man. Like
thanks, man.
Guys you're doing such a tremendous work, man. Like African text in general. I love the fact that you made the point earlier that African text, quite like every other African art, is kind of like downplayed and made to seem less important or primitive. I think that was a great point because it also affects our people negatively, and we tend to value like Western and like European forms of art to be more valuable than our art. And what you guys are doing is such a tremendous piece of work, and I would like to thank you guys. And if I could ask a couple questions about not just Nsibidi but other African languages that may connect, that would be great.
Sure, bro.
Yeah. So like my little study. All right. So like by trade, I do graphic design, right? And I do technical fashion design for a lot of independent brands and bigger brands. But me myself, I own a brand called Beast of Glory, and a part of the brand story is telling an African story in America. a part of it, a part of the new phase of the brand, what I really like to do is incorporate ancient African texts and symbols and just language in general. And I stumbled on Nsibidi about, I'd say, like 3 years ago, just out of just looking for ancient African texts. Um, and I stumbled upon Nsibidi, and I just didn't have like a reference point or like a direct person to ask. Um, what the first question I have is, what major African languages would you say connect to Nsibidi, and how do they connect to them, if you don't mind?
So Nsibidi was traditionally used in what is Nigeria and Cameroon today, particularly the southeastern, southwestern parts. It was used traditionally by like at least 50 different ethnic groups in the region. Not 50, that's an exaggeration, but at least, 20, 25 different ethnic groups, particularly Igbo. Well, if I don't want to, say different, various sub different, ethnic groups, but there are different people in the region: Anang, Ibibio, Efik, Efud, um, and I don't want to say the name wrong, Ekoi. There's different groups, Mbe, that had their own institutions and uses of Nsibidi. It's just now modernly it's being popularized with the Igbo language, because Jadi Kobe did a lot of his research in Igbo, as well as a lot of people who still use Nsibidi are within the our Chukwu kindred, so they actually do use, read, and write certain symbols, as well as in the Ebonyi, the Afipo people. The Izilo weavers, they weave for the Ekpe society, the Okara cloths as well.
Oh, that's wicked. That's wicked. The guy who translated it, what's his name? Is it Chadin Kobe, or is it Chadi Kobe?
Chi Adi Kobe.
Chi Adi. Oh, okay. I have an uncle named Chadi, and that's Chadi is a Congolese name.
Yeah.
So I thought there was like some sort of connection there. And when I first stumbled on Nsibidi, I remember reading that it had its origins in Nigeria. So I thought there was probably no connection to any East African languages, but since its symbols, since it's symbols, can you just take those symbols and apply them within other languages, or does it have to stick to the like the local or like native languages of that region?
So the thing about this project is I've made it pretty, like, I don't say clear, but like it's pretty flexible with as far as the different applications for Nsibidi. Traditionally it was used for that region, and that's the whole hopes of this project, because I really do want it to be for the funding and the the enrichment of the languages within that region and their various diasporan groups. However, these characters can be applied for any language. So they can be applied to other languages. It's just how that may vary, because if you're applying it phonetically, for example, if I were to apply this to Yoruba, it would look differently than if I were to apply it to Igbo, because Igbo has noun instruments, or like a lot of even Efik and Ibibio, they have like things in the front and in the back. I think Yoruba has this as well, but like it's a little more common in these other languages, like M and N in the front, or consonant endings in the back, stuff like that may not exist in another language. And it's not because it's, you need to do this phonetically. It's just that it will look different depending on the expression of the thing you're saying. So if I say, I long time no see, for example, in Efik, that would be like the turtle sees you. That would be expressed in the characters. But in Igbo, it's like Anyagi, which is like I see you. So it would be a little different. You would still see that I character or that C character, but one would have tortoise and one would have a person. And that's where it becomes that cultural distinction, because they actually revere the tortoise a lot in a lot of their folk tales and all that other stuff. And you can still understand that by being around those people, or you would still get it in the characters as well by just reading, like, and understanding that, okay, tortoise, why is this tortoise instead of, the character that you learn. And that's where it becomes a interactive, cross-cultural communication thing. So yeah, you can use it for any culture.
Okay, yeah, because I kind of tried to like I kind of tried to do a phonetic thing myself, but just with Swahili, because Swahili is the language that Swahili is what I speak. So like trying to read it from how I saw it on paper. It always gave me like a more Western African twang. So I was just wondering if there were ways to incorporate it in other African languages. But yeah, man, thanks for the insight. And to find out about, I mean, to look more into your project. That's what Kanji was posting in the chat, correct?
Yep.
Yeah,
right, cool, man.
I forgot to post a few more links. So
All right, wicked, man. Yo, I'm definitely gonna keep up, and I'd love to keep in touch with you, brothers. I don't know if your email is also listed in the back chat or anything, but yeah, I'd love to possibly possibly just connect via email just to get more insight, if you don't mind.
yeah, sure. Let's see. I can connect my.
See some of those links. Yeah, and if you want to share something,
Yeah, I see the links.
Let me share my screen.
Shout out to Malaya, so she's learning a lot. We're here for you to give you all the up-to-date African-centered consciousness.
My friends.
But yeah, I don't want to hold you guys up. I'll definitely keep watching in the chat. Thank you guys so much, man.
Michelle, thanks for coming on in.
Thank you so much, man.
Right,
Appreciate your questions.
Peace, bro. Thank you.
Uh-oh.
You trying to share it?
Yeah, I was trying to post my email.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. I mean, this is at least like, the one that you can.
Yeah, so if you put in the private chat, okay, there it is, Nsibidi. And the thing about it is, like, it's good that, someone from the diaspora is taking on the mantle, especially before a foreigner or a non-African when it comes to, like, maintaining our civilization and our writing. That's super, super important.
I agree.
And if anybody wants to hit the link, If you have any questions, also support Juju Man on this Cashapp, His Royal Highness. Love the show and you want to see some more shows, hit me on the Cashapp, $Camjiverse. We've been talking about Nsibidi, going over some of its usages from ancient to modern times, and just the way that we could use it to invigorate African societies and even spark a cultural and technological revolution. So definitely stay tapped in. He posted his email at the bottom, nsibidi@gmail.com. If you have any, direct questions, or if you would like to support him further. This is not easy work. It's a labor of love when it comes to bringing in all of the different elements of our classical civilizations in the modern times. Juju here is a college student. I was at that point. I'm in the industry now, but still, in this economy, it's a grind. So, we would greatly appreciate any and all support.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
No problem. We always do it big here on Comgyverse. So if anybody, doesn't really have anything to say, or nobody wants to hop on in, do you have any closers?
I'll say stay thirsty, my friends. I won't do that. But let's see. Basically, this is supposed to be fun, guys. It's not something that's supposed to be daunting. I really look forward to your questions and concerns. It really is something I'm excited for to see. It's just so much beautiful, kind of expressive things that we can do with this stuff. And I really hope that everyone just takes this and runs with it. There is, of course, kind of conventions you want to follow, like you don't want to just dry write something that you don't understand, but you do have this keyboard and help. And if you have any individual questions, I'll try my best to get to you. I am busy. This is my last semester of college though, and then I am writing this book that'll be out teaching the basics of the system. But I really do hope to answer all of your questions and just be a light for anybody who has any further concerns regarding Nsibidi.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to have you on. Shout out to Nalaya, Quenu Time in the comments, and everybody who tapped on in. This was a really, really enlightening conversation, just learning about Nsibidi and learning about the different connections and ways that it could be used, and the way that we could basically use it to be ourselves and have a sense of pride in the same way that we see other cultures having, just to be able to value our civilizations. And we definitely want to put on many more of these types of conversations in the future, especially if y'all support. We appreciate everybody for tapping in, and just thank you for, coming on in with Comgyverse. And with that, I'm finna lay my countdown, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Louisa.